Welcome, friends. I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're drifting towards sleep, unwinding after a long day, or simply looking for a quiet companion, you found the right place. Before we begin, I'd love to know where in the world are you listening from. Perhaps you're wrapped in a blanket, sitting by a softly lit window, or resting somewhere under an open sky. Wherever you are, I hope you're warm, comfortable, and ready to wander with me into the ancient stones that rest in landscapes still unmarked by the familiar patterns of human civilization. If you find peace or curiosity in these gentle stories, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or sharing it with someone who might need a moment of stillness too. And to those who've already joined along, thank you. In the quiet hours before dawn, when mist clings to valleys that have known 10,000 such mornings, there stand stones that carry no memory of their placement. They rest in fields where no plow has turned the earth into neat furrows, where no roads connect distant settlements, where the very concept of settlement remains thousands of years in the future. Yet, here they are, worked, shaped, intentionally positioned by hands that left no other lasting trace of their presence in the archaeological record. The stones themselves speak in the language of hammer strikes and careful selection. Their surfaces bear the unmistakable marks of human intention. Tool marks that spiral around carefully chosen angles, evidence of planning that extends beyond the simple needs of shelter or immediate survival. Yet they rest in landscapes that archaeology insists knew only hunter-gatherers. People who moved with the seasons and left behind nothing permanent except these monuments that were never supposed to exist according to the established timeline of human development. The paradox settles into the morning air like fog, neither urgent nor easily dismissed. It whispers through the academic corridors where theories about human social evolution rest on assumptions that these stones quietly contradict. The monuments stand as patient witnesses to capabilities that appear centuries or millennia before the cultural conditions that supposedly made such capabilities possible. In Turkey's Anatolian plateau, where rolling hills stretch toward horizons unmarked by cities or the geometric boundaries of agriculture, Gobekli Tepe emerges from soil that once covered its carved pillars for 11,000 years. The site predates pottery, predates metallurgy, predates the domestication of grains that would later reshape the world into patterns recognizable to modern eyes. Its builders worked in a time when ice sheets still claimed vast territories to the north, when sea levels rested hundreds of feet below their current boundaries, when the climate itself maintained a different rhythm than the stable patterns that would later enable the rise of farming communities. Yet, the carved animals that spiral around its stone pillars display an artistic sophistication that seems to belong to a much later chapter of human development. Foxes, scorpions, and birds emerge from the limestone with anatomical accuracy that suggests intimate knowledge of animal behavior, seasonal patterns, migration routes. The sculptors understood not just the external appearance of these creatures, but their relationships to each other and to the broader ecosystem that surrounded this ancient gathering place. The site's excavation reveals layer upon layer of intentional burial, a process that unfolded across centuries. Someone, at some point in the distant past, decided to cover these monuments with tons of earth and stone, creating the artificial hill that would preserve them through millennia of weather and forgetting. This act of concealment required coordinated effort, spanning generations. The same kind of organization that mainstream archaeology claims these pre-agricultural peoples could not achieve. Only took 11,000 years for modern excavation to rediscover what someone deliberately chose to hide. The burial process itself presents mysteries that resist simple explanation. The stones were covered not hastily, not through natural processes of erosion and accumulation, but with careful layers of smaller rocks and soil that formed a protective shell around the monuments. This suggests that the original builders, or their descendants, possessed long-term thinking about preservation that extends beyond immediate practical concerns. They buried their greatest achievements as though planning for a future rediscovery by people who would understand their significance. Similar mysteries emerge from landscapes across the globe with suspicious regularity, as though knowledge of advanced stoneworking techniques appeared simultaneously in cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. In the Orkney Islands, where Atlantic winds polish stone into smooth curves, and salt spray carries the constant reminder of the sea's presence. Skara Brae reveals stone furniture and sophisticated drainage systems from a time when Britain remained connected to continental Europe by bridges of land and ice. The settlement's preservation beneath sand dunes protected details that should not have survived the harsh North Atlantic climate-carved spirals that echo patterns found in monuments thousands of miles away. Fitted joints that require no mortar yet have weathered millennia of storms. Evidence of mathematical planning in cultures that supposedly possessed no formal mathematics. The stone beds, shelves, and hearths display an understanding of ergonomics and functionality that suggests long observation of human comfort and domestic efficiency. Even more intriguing are the drainage systems that channel water through carefully calculated slopes, preventing the accumulation of moisture that would make these stone dwellings uninhabitable. The builders understood hydraulic principles that would not be formally recognized in engineering texts for thousands of years. They solved problems of water management with solutions that modern construction still employs, yet they did so without the theoretical framework that contemporary engineering education considers essential for such work. The builders of these early monuments left behind no written records, no pottery shards decorated with explanatory symbols, no tool caches that might illuminate their methods. They appear in the archaeological record as ghosts who moved stones and then vanished, leaving only their most permanent works as evidence of their presence. The silence feels intentional, as though they understood that words and smaller artifacts decay while stone endures, carrying its message across millennia without need for translation or interpretation. This absence of documentation presents archaeologists with a peculiar challenge: without written records. The motivations and methods of these ancient builders must be inferred from the monuments themselves. Yet stone tells only part of the story. It reveals the final result, but not the social processes, the planning discussions, the trial and error learning that must have preceded such sophisticated construction. The monuments stand as finished sentences in an unknown language, their meaning clear in general terms but opaque in specific detail. Even the dating of these structures carries uncertainty that archaeologists acknowledge with careful qualifications. Radiocarbon analysis depends on organic materials, charcoal fragments from ancient fires, bone fragments from meals, plant matter incorporated into construction found in association with the stones. But association proves only proximity, not contemporaneity. The stones themselves, quarried from bedrock that crystallized millions of years before human consciousness evolved, offer no chemical signature that could pinpoint when human hands first shaped their surfaces. The monuments float in time, anchored only by the fragile remains of campfires and food scraps that may or may not relate to their construction. A piece of charcoal found beneath a megalith might date to the structure's construction, or it might represent a later visitor's fire, built centuries after the stones were placed. The distinction carries profound implications for understanding human development, yet the evidence often cannot support definitive conclusions. What emerges from this quiet evidence is a picture of capability existing before the conditions that supposedly made such capability possible. These stone structures represent engineering knowledge appearing before the social complexity that engineering knowledge supposedly requires. They suggest coordination without hierarchical leadership, planning without writing systems, precision without metal tools, astronomical knowledge without formal mathematical notation. The stones rest in their ancient positions like patient teachers, waiting for questions that archaeology has only recently learned to ask. They challenge assumptions about the linear progression of human development, the necessity of certain social conditions for technological achievement, the relationship between complexity and capability. Their presence in pre-agricultural landscapes suggests that human potential may have manifested in ways that current models of cultural evolution do not adequately account for. In the growing light of dawn, as mist begins to lift from valleys that have witnessed countless such transitions from darkness to illumination, these ancient monuments maintain their quiet testimony. They speak not of answers, but of questions that remain unresolved, mysteries that deepen rather than clarify with each new archaeological discovery, stones that continue to exist in defiance of the timelines that were supposed to explain them. The morning light reveals what darkness concealed stones that dwarf the human figures who once moved them into position. At Stonehenge, where chalk downs roll toward horizons unmarked by modern intrusion, the sarsen stones rest in their ancient circle like sleeping giants who chose this particular spot for reasons that remain locked in geological silence. Each trilithon, those paired uprights crowned with horizontal lintels, required the coordinated effort of hundreds of people working in precise synchronization. Yet the culture that achieved this feat left no evidence of the social structures that such coordination supposedly demands. The weight of these monuments speaks in numbers that resist casual comprehension. The largest sarsen stones at Stonehenge weigh 50 tons each, rough equivalents to 40 modern automobiles stacked and somehow maneuvered into vertical position without the aid of metal tools, wheeled vehicles, or draft animals. The smaller blue stones, transported from Welsh quarries over 150 miles distant, weigh between 2 and 4 tons apiece, manageable by contemporary standards, impossibly cumbersome for people whose technological toolkit consisted of stone hammers, wooden levers, and rope braided from plant fibers. Yet, the evidence of their transport remains undeniably present in the chemical signatures that link these stones to specific outcrops in the Preseli Mountains of Wales. Geological analysis confirms what the naked eye cannot detect: these particular rocks crystallized in Welsh bedrock and nowhere else, carrying within their mineral structure the unmistakable fingerprint of their distant origin. Someone, for reasons that archaeology cannot definitively explain, decided that only these specific stones would suffice for this particular monument, despite the availability of suitable local materials. The logistics of this transport challenge modern understanding of prehistoric capabilities. The most direct route from Wales to Salisbury Plain crosses terrain that would have been impassable to people carrying multi-ton stones, steep valleys, unbridged rivers, marshes that would swallow heavy loads. Alternative routes along the coast and upriver systems require sophisticated knowledge of tides, seasonal water levels, and the construction of rafts or boats capable of bearing such enormous cargo without capsizing. Archaeological experiments in stone transport reveal the gap between theoretical possibility and practical achievement. Modern attempts to move replica stones using only prehistoric technologies have succeeded over short distances under controlled conditions. But these experiments employ teams of trained volunteers working with predetermined plans and modern safety equipment. The ancient builders possessed none of these advantages, yet somehow accomplished what modern recreations struggle to achieve, even with careful preparation and contemporary knowledge of physics and engineering principles. The precision of megalithic construction adds another layer to the mystery. At sites across Europe, massive stones fit together with tolerances measured in millimeters. Their surfaces work to smoothness that approaches machine precision despite being shaped with stone tools. The Passage Tomb at Newgrange in Ireland displays masonry techniques that prevent water infiltration after 5,000 years of exposure to the harsh Atlantic climate. The builders understood principles of weatherproofing, thermal expansion, and structural load distribution that would not be formally recognized in architectural theory for millennia. Inside these monuments, astronomical alignments reveal knowledge that extends far beyond the practical needs of hunter-gatherer societies. Newgrange admits sunlight only during the winter solstice, its narrow passage acting as a precisely calculated viewing tube that illuminates the burial chamber for exactly 17 minutes on the shortest day of the year. This alignment requires not only understanding of solar cycles, but the mathematical ability to calculate angles, predict celestial positions, and construct accordingly. The social implications of such projects hover at the edges of archaeological comprehension like shadows that resist direct examination. Moving 50-ton stones requires not just physical strength, but organizational systems capable of coordinating large groups across extended periods. People must be fed, housed, and motivated while contributing to projects that offer no immediate practical benefit. Leadership structures must emerge to direct complex operations, yet the same cultures that built these monuments left no evidence of the hierarchical social organization that such leadership supposedly necessitates. Only took 5,000 years for anyone to seriously question how societies without kings built monuments that required royal levels of organization. The contradiction nestles comfortably in academic discussions, where theoretical models accommodate evidence that should, by all logical reasoning, invalidate those same models. The stones persist in their impossible arrangements, patient witnesses to capabilities that exceed the social conditions thought necessary for their expression. The mystery deepens when similar megalithic traditions appear simultaneously across vast geographical distances. Malta's temple complexes, built from local limestone, display construction techniques nearly identical to those found in Brittany's Stone Rose. Despite being separated by hundreds of miles of Mediterranean waters, the builders of these distant sites somehow arrived at similar solutions to similar problems without the communication networks that would explain such convergence. In Brittany, the stones of Karnak stretch in parallel rows across landscapes that have known human habitation for thousands of years, yet the alignments themselves predate any known settlement in the region. Over 3,000 standing stones march across the countryside in formations that suggest purpose without revealing function. They align with celestial phenomena, follow mathematical progressions, and create acoustic effects that transform the landscape into a kind of stone orchestra. Yet their builders vanished without leaving explanatory texts or even persistent oral traditions. The acoustic properties of megalithic sites reveal another dimension of ancient knowledge that challenges assumptions about primitive capabilities. Many stone circles and passage tombs demonstrate sophisticated understanding of sound amplification, echo patterns, and resonance frequencies. Voices speaking at specific locations within these monuments can be heard clearly throughout the structure, while sounds originating outside are muffled or excluded entirely. The builders engineered acoustic environments with precision that modern concert halls strive to achieve through computer modeling and extensive testing. At the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, underground chambers carved from solid limestone create resonance effects that amplify certain vocal frequencies while dampening others. The result transforms human speech into something approaching musical tones, suggesting that these spaces were designed for specific types of vocal performance or ceremonial activity. The acoustic engineering required for such effects demands understanding of wave physics that would not be formally recognized until the development of modern acoustics. These monuments emerge from landscapes that supposedly knew only simple hunter-gatherer societies, yet they demonstrate capabilities that suggest complex understanding of engineering, astronomy, acoustics, and mathematics. The stones stand as silent testimony to human potential, expressing itself in forms that current models of cultural development struggle to accommodate. They rest in their ancient positions like questions carved in stone, waiting for archaeological theory to develop frameworks adequate to their implications. The weight of intentional placement speaks not just in tons of stone, but in the accumulated evidence of human capability appearing where and when it was not supposed to exist. These monuments suggest that the relationship between social complexity and technological achievement may be more fluid, more mysterious than the linear progressions that archaeology has traditionally assumed. The question of transport haunts the quiet valleys where megalithic monuments rest in splendid isolation, their massive stones bearing no trace of the journey that brought them to these precise locations. Across the landscape, ancient quarries reveal the scars where enormous blocks were extracted from living bedrock. Yet between these sources and the monuments themselves lies terrain that holds no evidence of the roads, ramps, or pathways that such transport would seemingly require. In Egypt's Aswan quarries, granite obelisks lie abandoned in various stages of completion, their surfaces marked by the systematic percussion that ancient workers used to separate stone from bedrock. The unfinished obelisk, weighing over 1,000 tons, rests where it has lain for millennia, its partially severed base still connected to the granite matrix that birthed it. Had this monument been completed and transported to its intended destination, it would have represented the heaviest single stone ever moved by human effort in the ancient world. The techniques visible in these quarries reveal sophisticated understanding of stone's internal structure and fracture patterns. Workers followed natural fissures in the granite, using controlled expansion to split massive blocks along predetermined lines. Holes drilled in precise rows show where wooden wedges were inserted and then soaked with water. The expansion of wet wood providing enough pressure to crack granite along desired planes. The process required patience measured in seasons, knowledge passed through generations, and coordination of effort that left no trace in the historical record. Yet the abandoned state of these quarries presents mysteries that resist straightforward explanation. Why were such enormous projects suddenly abandoned, leaving partially completed monuments to weather in place for thousands of years? The unfinished obelisk shows no evidence of fatal flaws that would have necessitated abandonment. Its surface displays the same quality of workmanship found in completed monuments, suggesting that the work stopped not because of technical failure, but for reasons that remain archaeologically invisible. The transport routes themselves present even deeper puzzles. Modern analysis of megalithic sites reveals that the largest stones often traveled the greatest distances, defying the logical assumption that builders would use the closest available materials. The blue stones of Stonehenge, weighing several tons each, originated in Wales despite the presence of suitable local stone within a few miles of the monument. The motivations for such choices hover beyond the reach of practical explanations, suggesting spiritual or symbolic preferences that left no documentary evidence. Archaeological surveys of the landscape between these quarries and monuments reveal terrain that would have presented formidable obstacles to stone transport. River valleys without bridges, marshy ground that would not support heavy loads, hillsides with gradients that would make hauling massive stones impossibly difficult with the tools available to prehistoric cultures. Modern attempts to recreate these journeys using only ancient technologies have achieved limited success over short distances under ideal conditions. Yet somehow the original builders accomplished these feats repeatedly across challenging terrain. The absence of transport infrastructure adds another layer to the mystery. Roads capable of bearing multi-ton loads leave archaeological traces that persist for millennia, compacted surfaces, drainage systems, evidence of engineering work to level difficult terrain. Yet surveys of the routes between megalithic quarries and construction sites reveal no such evidence. The stones appear to have traveled across landscapes that show no preparation for their passage, as though they moved through terrain that offered no resistance to their transport. In Lebanon's Baalbek, the largest worked stones in the ancient world rest in foundations that required transport from quarries over a mile distant. The stone of the pregnant woman weighs over 800 tons, while the recently discovered stone of the south exceeds 1,000 tons. These megaliths dwarf anything that Roman engineering is known to have accomplished, yet they occupy foundation courses beneath Roman temple complexes, suggesting construction techniques that predate the classical period by centuries or millennia. The quarry that produced these stones reveals evidence of even more ambitious projects. Several blocks that exceed the weight of anything found at Baalbek remain in various stages of extraction, their surfaces showing tool marks consistent with ancient working methods. These abandoned stones suggest that the builders possessed capabilities that extended beyond even their most impressive achievements, as though the monuments that survive represent only a fraction of what they could accomplish. Only took 2,000 years for modern engineering to develop machinery capable of lifting such weights, and even contemporary cranes require carefully prepared surfaces and stable foundations to handle loads approaching these ancient achievements. The precision with which these massive blocks were positioned in their final locations suggests not just the ability to move enormous weights, but to place them with accuracy measured in inches across distances of miles. The logistics of megalithic transport reveal gaps in archaeological understanding that extend far beyond simple questions of ancient technology. Moving stones weighing hundreds of tons requires not just physical capability, but organizational systems capable of coordinating vast resources across extended periods. Teams of workers must be assembled, fed, and housed. Tools must be manufactured and maintained. Routes must be planned and prepared. Yet the cultures responsible for these achievements left no evidence of the administrative structures that such projects would seemingly require. In the Andes, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman displays stonework that challenges contemporary understanding of ancient Peruvian capabilities. Blocks weighing over 100 tons fit together with joints so precise that knife blades cannot be inserted between them. Yet the quarries that produce these stones lie several miles away across terrain that includes steep valleys and unstable slopes. The Inca, who are credited with this construction, possessed no wheeled vehicles, no draft animals capable of moving such loads, and no metal tools harder than bronze. The surfaces of these Andean megaliths reveal another mystery evidence of cutting and shaping techniques that left marks unlike anything produced by known ancient tools. Some stones display what appear to be sawing marks, as though they were cut with tools capable of slicing through solid granite and andesite with the efficiency of modern diamond-tipped equipment. Yet, the same sites that display such sophisticated stone working also contain evidence of much more primitive technologies, creating archaeological contexts that seem internally contradictory. The absence of intermediate technologies presents particular challenges for understanding megalithic achievement. Archaeological sequences typically show gradual development of capabilities, with each innovation building upon previous knowledge and techniques, yet megalithic construction appears in the archaeological record without apparent precedent, displaying sophisticated understanding of engineering principles that leave no evidence of the experimental phases that such mastery would require. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of megalithic sites continue to reveal buried foundations that extend far beyond visible monuments. These hidden structures suggest that the stonework visible above ground represents only a fraction of ancient construction projects, implying capabilities that exceeded even the impressive achievements that have survived to the present day. The buried portions of these sites await excavation that may reveal construction techniques and organizational capabilities that challenge current understanding of prehistoric human societies. The quarries stand empty now, their surfaces weathered by millennia of exposure to wind and rain. Yet the stones they once contained continue to pose questions about human capability, ancient knowledge, and the technologies that leave no trace in the archaeological record except their impossible achievements. The surfaces of ancient megaliths speak in a language of precision that should not exist in the archaeological record of Copper Age societies. At Puma Punku in Bolivia, where the Altiplano stretches toward horizons marked by snow-capped peaks, andesite blocks display flat surfaces accurate to within fractions of millimeters across spans measured in meters. The precision approaches tolerances achieved by modern machine tools. Yet these monuments predate the development of iron by centuries, existing in a technological context where the hardest available metal tools consisted of copper and bronze implements incapable of working the volcanic stone from which these blocks were carved. The tool marks preserved on these ancient surfaces tell stories that resist conventional archaeological interpretation. Channels cut through solid granite display the characteristic patterns of systematic material removal, yet the cutting edges that created these marks remain archaeologically invisible. No caches of tools have been discovered that could account for such precise stoneworking. No foundries that could produce implements harder than the stones themselves. No evidence of the technological infrastructure that precision stone cutting would seemingly require. In Egypt's granite quarries, unfinished obelisks reveal working methods that challenge understanding of ancient Egyptian capabilities. The surfaces of these massive monuments display regular percussion marks where workers systematically remove material grain by grain, following predetermined lines with accuracy that rivals modern surveying. Yet, the tools responsible for this work, if they consisted of the copper and bronze implements found in Egyptian archaeological contexts, should have been incapable of effectively working granite, a stone that ranks higher on the hardness scale than the metals supposedly used to shape it. Experimental archaeology has attempted to replicate these ancient stoneworking techniques using tools reconstructed from archaeological evidence. Copper chisels and bronze implements, when applied to granite and similar hard stones, quickly become dulled and deformed, requiring constant resharpening and replacement. The amount of time and tool replacement necessary to complete even small sections of megalithic stonework extends beyond practical possibility, suggesting that either the ancient builders possessed tools not reflected in the archaeological record or employed working methods that remain fundamentally misunderstood. The precision of megalithic joints presents additional challenges to conventional understanding. At Sacsayhuamán in Peru, stones weighing multiple tons fit together with tolerances measured in fractions of inches, their irregular surfaces matching perfectly across complex three-dimensional curves. Each block represents a unique shape that could only fit in one specific position. Yet the builders achieved this precision without the measuring instruments, mathematical notation, or metal tools that modern engineering considers essential for such work. The surfaces of these precisely fitted stones reveal working marks that suggest cutting and shaping techniques beyond the capabilities of known ancient tools. Some blocks display what appear to be sawing marks, as though they were sectioned with implements capable of slicing through solid rock with the efficiency of contemporary diamond-tipped equipment. Yet these same sites show no evidence of the advanced metallurgy that would be necessary to produce tools capable of such performance. Only took 5,000 years for human technology to develop cutting tools capable of replicating the precision visible on ancient megalithic surfaces. and even modern equipment requires electrical power, industrial infrastructure, and sophisticated alloy composition to achieve comparable results. The ancient builders accomplished similar precision using technologies that left no trace in the archaeological record except their impossible achievements. The mathematical relationships embedded in megalithic construction reveal knowledge that extends far beyond the practical requirements of stone cutting. The proportions of Egyptian pyramids encode geometric ratios that would not be formally recognized in mathematical theory for millennia. The builders understood relationships between circumference and diameter, diagonal and side length, volume and surface area that suggest familiarity with mathematical principles typically attributed to later civilizations. At the Giza complex, the Great Pyramid's dimensions encode the ratio pi to several decimal places, despite being constructed by a civilization that supposedly possessed no formal mathematical notation for such concepts. The monument's base perimeter, when divided by its height, produces the mathematical constant that describes the relationship between a circle's circumference and radius. This precision suggests not accidental approximation, but intentional design based on mathematical knowledge that exceeds the capabilities typically attributed to pyramid-building cultures. The acoustic properties of precisely cut stone chambers reveal another dimension of ancient knowledge that challenges conventional understanding of prehistoric capabilities. Many megalithic sites demonstrate sophisticated understanding of resonance frequencies, sound amplification, and echo control. The stone chambers achieve these effects through precise dimensional relationships and surface finishes that require mathematical understanding of wave behavior and acoustic engineering principles. Inside the Great Pyramid, the King's Chamber displays acoustic properties that transform human speech into resonant tones, suggesting that the space was designed for specific types of vocal performance or ceremonial activity. The chamber's dimensions create standing wave patterns that amplify certain frequencies while dampening others, effects that can only be achieved through careful calculation of room proportions and surface treatments. Yet, the builders accomplished this acoustic engineering without the theoretical framework that modern acoustics considers necessary for such precise control of sound behavior. The precision extends beyond individual monuments to encompass entire complexes that demonstrate coordinated planning across vast scales. At Giza, the alignment of three major pyramids mirrors the pattern of stars in Orion's belt with accuracy that requires sophisticated astronomical observation and mathematical calculation. The builders possessed not only the stone-cutting techniques necessary to construct these monuments, but the surveying capabilities required to position them according to celestial coordinates. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal buried chambers and passages within megalithic sites, suggesting that the precision visible on external surfaces extends throughout these structures' hidden interiors. Many of these spaces remain unexcavated, their exact dimensions and finishing quality unknown. But their presence implies that ancient builders maintained consistent standards of precision even in portions of their work that would never be visible to observers. The mystery deepens when similar levels of precision appear simultaneously at megalithic sites across vast geographical distances. Monuments in Egypt, Peru, and Bolivia display comparable stoneworking techniques despite being separated by oceans and continents. The convergence suggests either direct contact between ancient civilizations or independent development of identical advanced technologies, both possibilities that challenge conventional understanding of prehistoric human capabilities and cultural diffusion. The tool marks preserved on ancient megalithic surfaces continue to resist identification with any implements found in archaeological contexts. The cutting patterns suggest technologies that combine the precision of modern machine tools with capabilities that extend beyond anything in the contemporary engineering toolkit. These ancient surfaces bear witness to human knowledge that expressed itself in stone but left no other trace in the archaeological record, creating monuments that continue to challenge understanding of what prehistoric cultures could achieve with tools that were supposedly primitive by modern standards. The precision speaks not just in measurements and tolerances, but in the accumulated evidence of capabilities that appeared without apparent precedent and vanished without leaving technological successors. These ancient stones bear the marks of knowledge that manifested briefly in human history and then disappeared, leaving only its most permanent expressions carved in surfaces that continue to defy explanation. The stones remember celestial movements that their builders recorded without writing, encoding astronomical knowledge in monuments that serve as eternal calendars carved from rock that will outlast any written record. Across the world's megalithic sites, alignments point towards celestial events with precision that suggests not casual observation, but systematic study of sky patterns across generations of careful watching and mathematical calculation. At Newgrange in Ireland, where rolling hills meet horizons unchanged since the monument's construction 5,000 years ago, the winter solstice transforms an ancient passage tomb into a precisely calibrated astronomical instrument. On the shortest day of the year, sunlight penetrates the monument's narrow entrance for exactly 17 minutes, traveling down a 60-foot corridor to illuminate the burial chamber at the structure's heart. This alignment requires mathematical understanding of solar cycles, seasonal variations, and the geometric relationships between monument orientation and celestial mechanics. The precision of this alignment extends beyond simple directional pointing. The entrance aperture above the monument's doorway, called the roof box, frames the rising sun with calculated accuracy that accounts for changes in solar declination across centuries. The builders understood that Earth's axial tilt creates variations in sunrise positions throughout the year, and they engineered their monument to capture sunlight only during the brief period when the sun reaches its southernmost rising point. Archaeological investigation reveals that similar astronomical alignments appear at megalithic sites across Europe, suggesting widespread knowledge of celestial mechanics among cultures that supposedly lack the mathematical framework necessary for such calculations. Stone circles in Scotland align with lunar standstills, the extreme northern and southern positions that the moon reaches during its complex 18.6-year cycle. These alignments require not just observation of lunar behavior, but understanding of cyclical patterns that extend across decades of careful sky watching. The complexity of these astronomical alignments challenges conventional assumptions about the observational capabilities of prehistoric cultures. At Stonehenge, different phases of construction align with different celestial events, suggesting that the monument's builders modified their structure across centuries to track various astronomical phenomena. The monument serves simultaneously as a solar calendar, a lunar calculator, and a predictor of eclipses functions that require mathematical sophistication typically attributed to much later civilizations. Only took 4,000 years for formal astronomy to develop theoretical frameworks capable of explaining the celestial mechanics that these ancient monuments demonstrate through stone alignments. The builders encoded knowledge of precession, obliquity, and orbital variations in permanent structures that continue to function as astronomical instruments millennia after their creators vanished from the historical record. The mathematical precision of megalithic astronomy extends to sites separated by vast geographical distances. In Peru's Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone casts shadows that track solar movements throughout the year with accuracy that rivals modern sundials. At the equinoxes, the stone casts no shadow at noon, while solstice positions mark the extremes of seasonal variation. The carved angles and placement of this monument require understanding of local latitude, solar declination, and the geometric relationships that govern shadow casting at specific geographical locations. Similar astronomical alignments appear at sites across the Americas, from the medicine wheels of the Great Plains to the observatory complexes of ancient Mexico. These monuments encode knowledge of stellar positions, planetary movements, and calendar calculations that suggest systematic astronomical observation across multiple cultures and centuries. The convergence implies either widespread diffusion of advanced astronomical knowledge or independent development of similar observational capabilities, both possibilities that challenge conventional understanding of prehistoric scientific achievement. The absence of written astronomical records makes these stone alignments even more remarkable. The builders transmitted complex mathematical knowledge across generations without the benefit of written notation, numerical systems, or theoretical frameworks that modern astronomy considers essential for such precision. They developed methods for predicting celestial events, calculating calendar dates, and tracking long-term astronomical cycles using only stone monuments and oral tradition. At Nabta Playa in Egypt's Sahara Desert, a stone circle dating to approximately 6000 years ago aligns with the summer solstice and incorporates sight lines that point toward specific stars and constellations. The monument predates Stonehenge by over a millennium, yet displays comparable sophistication in astronomical alignment and mathematical precision. The builders understood not only the current positions of celestial objects, but their movements across time, encoding this knowledge in stone arrangements that continue to mark celestial events with startling accuracy. The astronomical functions of these monuments reveal knowledge that extends far beyond the practical needs of agricultural societies. Many alignments track celestial events that have no direct relationship to seasonal cycles or farming activities. Some monuments align with stellar phenomena that occur only at intervals measured in decades or centuries, suggesting that their builders possessed long-term astronomical knowledge that spanned multiple generations of observation and record-keeping. The megalithic builders demonstrated understanding of astronomical phenomena that would challenge modern amateur astronomers equipped with telescopes and star charts. They tracked the precession of equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that causes star positions to shift over periods of thousands of years. This knowledge appears encoded in monuments that adjust their astronomical functions to account for precession, maintaining accuracy across millennia through careful geometric design. At Göbekli in Germany, a wooden circle dating to approximately 7000 years ago represents one of the world's oldest known astronomical observatories. The structure's gates align with sunrise and sunset positions at the winter solstice, while internal features track various stellar and planetary movements throughout the year. The monument demonstrates that sophisticated astronomical observation was already established in Neolithic Europe, preceding the megalithic stone circles that would later encode similar knowledge in more permanent form. The acoustic properties of astronomically aligned monuments add another dimension to their sophisticated design. Many sites that display precise celestial alignments also demonstrate advanced understanding of sound amplification and acoustic engineering. The combination suggests that these monuments served multiple functions simultaneously as astronomical calculators, acoustic chambers, and ceremonial spaces that integrated scientific observation with ritual activity. The builders of these astronomical monuments possessed knowledge that manifested in stone but left no other trace in the archaeological record. They understood mathematical relationships between celestial mechanics and earthly geometry, yet they transmitted this knowledge without written texts, numerical notation, or the institutional frameworks that support scientific observation in contemporary societies. Their monuments stand as silent testimony to human capability, expressing itself in forms that challenge conventional understanding of how complex knowledge develops and persists across time. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal buried features at astronomically aligned sites, suggesting that the precision visible in surface monuments extends to hidden structures that remain unexcavated. These discoveries imply that ancient astronomical knowledge was even more sophisticated than surface evidence suggests, encoded in stone arrangements that await rediscovery and interpretation. The stones maintain their celestial appointments with unwavering precision, marking astronomical events that their builders calculated without the benefit of modern instruments or theoretical frameworks. They serve as permanent reminders that human knowledge can manifest in forms that transcend the technological limitations of their time, creating monuments that continue to function as astronomical instruments millennia after their creators faded into historical silence. Sound moves through ancient stone chambers in ways that reveal knowledge of acoustic principles that would not be formally recognized until the development of modern architectural acoustics. At megalithic sites across the world, carved spaces amplify human voices with precision that transforms ordinary speech into resonant tones, creating acoustic environments that suggest the builders understood wave behavior, frequency response, and the mathematical relationships that govern sound propagation through enclosed spaces. The hypogeum of Sacsayhuaman in Malta, carved entirely from solid limestone bedrock 3 levels deep into the earth, demonstrates acoustic engineering that rivals modern concert halls in its sophisticated control of sound behavior. Voices speaking at specific locations within the underground complex resonate throughout the entire structure, while sounds originating from other positions remain localized and contained. The effect requires precise calculation of chamber dimensions, ceiling heights, and wall angles that create standing wave patterns capable of amplifying certain frequencies while dampening others. Archaeological investigation reveals that the acoustic properties of this site were not accidental byproducts of construction, but intentional design features that governed the monument's architectural planning. The chambers display evidence of careful shaping to enhance specific acoustic effects, with walls carved to exact curvatures that focus sound waves toward particular locations. The builders understood that human voices produce complex combinations of frequencies, and they engineered spaces that would selectively amplify the harmonic components most conducive to vocal resonance. The precision of megalithic acoustics extends to sites separated by vast geographical distances, suggesting widespread knowledge of sound engineering principles among cultures that supposedly lacked the mathematical framework necessary for such sophisticated acoustic design. At Newgrange in Ireland, the passage tomb's interior demonstrates acoustic properties nearly identical to those found at Mediterranean sites, despite being constructed with different materials in a completely different geographical context. Inside Newgrange's central chamber, sounds produced near the entrance travel through the 60-foot passage and emerge in the burial chamber with remarkable clarity and amplification. The effect transforms whispers into clearly audible speech and gives musical tones a resonant quality that enhances their harmonic content. The builders achieved this acoustic performance through careful attention to passage dimensions, wall textures, and the geometric relationships between different sections of the monument. Only took several millennia for formal acoustic theory to develop mathematical descriptions of the wave behavior that these ancient monuments demonstrate through stone engineering. The builders encoded knowledge of frequency response, resonance patterns, and sound propagation in permanent structures that continue to function as sophisticated acoustic instruments thousands of years after their completion. The acoustic properties of megalithic sites reveal understanding that extends beyond simple amplification to encompass complex manipulation of sound characteristics. Many monuments demonstrate frequency-selective responses that enhance certain types of vocal production while minimizing others. The effect suggests that these spaces were designed for specific types of performance or ceremonial activity that required particular acoustic conditions. At the stone circles of Scotland, researchers have documented acoustic phenomena that transform the monuments into natural amphitheaters capable of supporting complex vocal performances. Sounds produced at the centers of these circles propagate outward with uniform clarity, while external noises are effectively excluded from the interior acoustic environment. The stones act as sound reflectors and diffusers that create acoustic isolation from the surrounding landscape while enhancing communication between people positioned within the circle. The mathematical precision required for such acoustic engineering challenges conventional understanding of megalithic builders' capabilities. Creating spaces with specific frequency responses requires knowledge of wave mathematics, harmonic relationships, and the physical properties that govern sound behavior in enclosed environments. Yet the same cultures that achieved this acoustic sophistication left no evidence of the theoretical knowledge that such engineering would seemingly require. Experimental studies of megalithic acoustics reveal effects that extend beyond human hearing into ranges that suggest additional purposes for these carefully tuned spaces. Some monuments demonstrate resonance frequencies that correspond to natural phenomena wind patterns. Water movement. Seismic activity creating acoustic connections between human-built structures and the natural environment that surrounds them. The acoustic properties of stone chambers interact with their astronomical alignments in ways that suggest integrated design approaches combining multiple sophisticated technologies. At sites where celestial alignments admit sunlight at specific times of year, the acoustic characteristics often change in response to the altered lighting conditions. The combination creates multisensory environments that coordinate visual, auditory, and temporal elements into unified experiential systems. Inside the Great Pyramid's King's Chamber, acoustic measurements reveal resonance frequencies that correspond to specific musical intervals, creating harmonic relationships that enhance vocal tones produced within the space. The chamber's dimensions generate standing wave patterns that amplify certain frequencies while suppressing others, effectively tuning the space like a massive musical instrument. The builders achieved this acoustic performance through precise calculation of room proportions and surface treatments that require advanced understanding of wave behavior. The builders of these acoustic monuments possess knowledge of sound engineering that manifested in stone but left no other trace in the archaeological record. They understood mathematical relationships between space geometry and sound behavior, yet they transmitted this knowledge without written texts, musical notation, or the institutional frameworks that support acoustic research in contemporary societies. Their monuments stand as permanent demonstrations of human capability, expressing itself in forms that challenge conventional understanding of prehistoric scientific achievement. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal hidden chambers within acoustically sophisticated megalithic sites, suggesting that the sound engineering visible in accessible spaces extends to buried portions of these monuments that remain unexcavated. Many of these hidden chambers may possess acoustic properties that exceed anything currently documented at megalithic sites, implying that ancient sound engineering was even more advanced than surface evidence suggests. The acoustic mysteries deepen when similar sound engineering techniques appear at sites that supposedly had no contact with each other. Monuments in Ireland, Malta, Peru, and Egypt demonstrate comparable acoustic sophistication despite being separated by oceans and continents. The convergence suggests either direct transmission of acoustic knowledge between ancient civilizations or independent development of identical sound engineering principles, both possibilities that challenge conventional models of technological diffusion and cultural development. Modern attempts to recreate megalithic acoustic effects using contemporary knowledge and construction techniques have achieved only partial success. Despite access to computer modeling, precision instruments, and advanced materials. The ancient builders accomplished acoustic engineering that contemporary architecture struggles to replicate, creating sound environments whose performance continues to exceed modern understanding of the principles that govern their operation. The stone chambers maintain their acoustic properties with consistency that spans millennia, their carefully calculated dimensions continuing to produce the same resonance effects that their builders engineered thousands of years ago. They serve as permanent demonstrations that human knowledge can manifest in forms that transcend the apparent technological limitations of their historical context, creating monuments whose acoustic sophistication continues to challenge contemporary understanding of what prehistoric cultures could achieve through stone engineering and mathematical knowledge encoded in permanent architectural form. The joints between massive stones speak in the language of impossible precision, their surfaces meeting along irregular three-dimensional curves that fit together with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. At Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where Andean peaks rise toward horizons unmarked by modern intrusion, blocks weighing hundreds of tons rest against each other in interlocking patterns that have withstood centuries of earthquakes without mortar, without metal reinforcement, without any binding agent except the mathematical perfection of their carved surfaces. The precision of these joints defies conventional understanding of ancient stone working capabilities. Each block represents a unique shape that could only fit in one specific position within the structure. Yet the builders achieved this three-dimensional puzzle using tools that archaeology insists consisted only of bronze implements and stone hammers. The surfaces display no evidence of trial and error fitting, no adjustment marks that would indicate gradual refinement of the joint interfaces. The stones appear to have been carved to final dimensions before placement, suggesting understanding of spatial relationships that extends beyond direct measurement and physical testing. Archaeological investigation reveals joint tolerances that approach the precision of modern machine work. Gaps between stones measure less than the thickness of paper, maintained consistently across irregular surfaces that follow no geometric patterns recognizable to contemporary engineering. The builders shaped each block according to the unique contours of its neighbors, creating interlocking systems where removal of any single element would destabilize the entire structure. The effect requires three-dimensional visualization capabilities and mathematical understanding that challenge conventional assumptions about prehistoric cognitive abilities. The earthquake resistance of mortarless megalithic construction demonstrates engineering knowledge that formal seismology would not recognize for millennia. In regions where tectonic activity regularly destroys modern buildings constructed with steel reinforcement and engineered foundations, ancient stone structures continue to stand with their original joints intact. The builders understood principles of flexible construction, load distribution, and seismic response that enable their monuments to absorb earthquake energy without structural failure. At the temple complex of Ollantaytambo in Peru, megalithic walls display construction techniques that challenge every assumption about ancient building methods. Blocks weighing over 50 tons fit together in complex three-dimensional arrays where each stone surface interfaces with multiple neighbors along curves and angles that defy simple geometric description. The joints follow organic patterns that seem to flow like liquid despite being carved from solid rock, creating structural systems that combine strength with flexibility in ways that contemporary engineering struggles to replicate. Only took modern engineering several centuries to develop theoretical frameworks capable of explaining the seismic performance that these ancient structures demonstrate through their continued existence in earthquake-prone regions. The builders encoded knowledge of structural dynamics, material properties, and seismic response in permanent constructions that continue to outperform contemporary buildings designed with the benefit of computer modeling and advanced material science. The construction sequence of these mortarless megalithic structures presents mysteries that resist archaeological explanation. The builders somehow positioned multi-ton blocks with precision measured in millimeters, yet the same sites show no evidence of the heavy machinery, foundation systems, or structural frameworks that such precision placement would seemingly require. The stones appear to have been lowered into their final positions with accuracy that approaches telepathic precision, guided by methods that left no trace in the archaeological record. The three-dimensional complexity of megalithic joints extends beyond simple structural requirements to encompass aesthetic considerations that suggest artistic sensibilities operating at scales measured in hundreds of tons. Many stone interfaces display curves and contours that serve no structural purpose but create visual effects that enhance the monument's architectural impact. The builders treated massive blocks as sculptural elements, shaping their surfaces to create flowing patterns that transform utilitarian construction into artistic expression. The mathematical relationships embedded in mortarless megalithic construction reveal knowledge that extends far beyond the practical requirements of earthquake-resistant building. The proportions of individual blocks, the ratios between different structural elements, and the geometric relationships that govern joint patterns encode mathematical principles that would not be formally recognized for centuries after these monuments' completion. The builders understood spatial mathematics at levels that exceed the capabilities typically attributed to their cultures. In Bolivia's Puma Punku, andesite blocks display joint precision that challenges contemporary stoneworking capabilities. The surfaces meet along complex three-dimensional curves that maintain consistent gaps measured in fractions of millimeters across spans of several meters. The precision approaches tolerances achieved by modern machine tools. Yet these monuments predate metallurgy advanced enough to produce cutting implements capable of such performance. The builders achieved machine-level precision using technologies that remain archaeologically invisible. The acoustic properties of precisely fitted megalithic joints reveal another dimension of ancient engineering knowledge that challenges conventional understanding of prehistoric capabilities. The tight interfaces between stones create acoustic seals that prevent sound leakage while allowing controlled resonance within structural cavities. Many megalithic sites demonstrate that their builders understood not only the structural properties of mortarless construction, but its acoustic implications, engineering joints that serve simultaneous structural and acoustic functions. The durability of mortarless megalithic construction exceeds that of contemporary building techniques designed with the benefit of advanced materials and engineering theory. Modern structures built with steel reinforcement and engineered concrete typically require maintenance and repair within decades of completion. Yet megalithic monuments constructed without binding agents continue to maintain their structural integrity after millennia of exposure to weather, earthquakes, and other environmental stresses. Ground-penetrating radar surveys reveal that the precision visible in surface megalithic construction extends to buried foundation systems that remain unexcavated. These hidden structural elements suggest that ancient builders maintained consistent standards of joint precision throughout their monuments, even in portions of their work that would never be visible to observers. The implications extend beyond simple structural engineering to encompass organizational capabilities that could coordinate precision construction across entire building projects. The mystery deepens when similar mortarless construction techniques appear at megalithic sites separated by vast geographical distances. Monuments in Peru, Bolivia, Egypt, and Lebanon display comparable joint precision despite being built by cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. The convergence suggests either direct transmission of advanced construction knowledge between ancient civilizations or independent development of identical engineering solutions, both possibilities that challenge conventional understanding of technological development and cultural diffusion. Modern attempts to recreate mortarless megalithic construction using contemporary tools and techniques have achieved only limited success. Despite access to precision machinery, computer-aided design, and advanced materials, the ancient builders accomplished joint precision that contemporary construction struggles to match, creating structural systems whose performance continues to exceed modern understanding of the engineering principles that govern their operation. The stones maintain their impossible precision with consistency that defies conventional understanding of how stone behaves under stress, temperature variations, and seismic loading. Their joints continue to function as their builders intended, maintaining structural integrity through forces that regularly destroy contemporary buildings, serving as permanent demonstrations that human engineering knowledge can manifest in forms that transcend the apparent technological limitations of their historical context. The silence of radiocarbon dating hangs over megalithic monuments like morning mist, obscuring the temporal boundaries that would anchor these structures in archaeological chronologies. Stone itself carries no carbon signature, no organic residue that could surrender to laboratory analysis and reveal the moment when human hands first shaped its crystalline structure. The monuments exist in a kind of temporal suspension, their construction dates floating in uncertainty despite their undeniable physical presence in landscapes that have witnessed millennia of human occupation. Archaeological dating relies on association rather than direct measurement, linking megaliths to organic materials found in their vicinity, charcoal fragments from ancient fires, bone fragments from ritual deposits, plant matter incorporated into construction fills. Yet, association proves only proximity, not contemporaneity. A piece of charcoal discovered beneath a megalithic foundation might date to the monument's construction, or it might represent the remains of a campfire built centuries later by visitors who sheltered beside an already ancient structure. The challenge deepens when radiocarbon dates from megalithic sites produce results that span thousands of years, creating temporal ranges so broad that they accommodate multiple distinct cultures and technological periods. At Gobekli Tepe in Turkey, organic materials associated with the site's megalithic pillars yield dates that extend across nearly 2 millennia, suggesting either extremely prolonged construction periods or multiple phases of use that blur the distinction between building, rebuilding, and ritual maintenance. The precision that characterizes megalithic construction contrasts sharply with the imprecision that characterizes their dating. Monuments built with mathematical accuracy measured in millimeters exist within chronological frameworks, measured in centuries or millennia. The temporal uncertainty creates archaeological contexts where structures displaying advanced engineering capabilities float through time periods that supposedly lacked the social complexity necessary for such achievements. Only took several decades of radiocarbon dating to reveal the extent of temporal uncertainty surrounding megalithic monuments. Yet the implications of this uncertainty continue to challenge archaeological interpretation. The dates that emerge from laboratory analysis often contradict the cultural sequences that traditional archaeology has constructed to explain human development, creating chronological paradoxes that resist resolution through conventional theoretical frameworks. The contamination of organic samples adds another layer of complexity to megalithic dating. Ancient carbon can be contaminated by younger organic materials that infiltrate archaeological deposits through root systems, animal activity, or groundwater movement. The result produces dates that may be significantly younger than the actual construction periods, creating chronological distortions that push megalithic achievements into later time periods where they seem more archaeologically plausible. Conversely, older carbon can contaminate younger samples through the incorporation of ancient organic materials into construction contexts. Builders might have used charcoal from old-growth trees, recycled organic matter from earlier occupations, or materials that had absorbed ancient carbon from geological sources. The effect produces dates that may be significantly older than actual construction periods, creating temporal associations that extend megalithic achievements into impossibly early chronological contexts. The statistical ranges that accompany radiocarbon dates reflect uncertainty that extends far beyond simple measurement error. Laboratory analysis produces probability distributions rather than precise dates, with confidence intervals that often span several centuries. When multiple samples from the same site produce different date ranges, the temporal uncertainty compounds, creating chronological frameworks broad enough to accommodate almost any theoretical interpretation. At Stonehenge, decades of radiocarbon analysis have produced a complex chronology that attributes different phases of construction to different time periods spanning over 15 centuries. Yet the monument's astronomical alignments suggest coordinated planning that would require consistent theoretical knowledge across all construction phases. The temporal framework implies either remarkable continuity of astronomical knowledge across centuries of cultural change or fundamental misunderstanding of how these monuments were actually built. The calibration of radiocarbon dates introduces additional uncertainty that reflects changes in atmospheric carbon concentrations across historical periods. The calibration curves used to convert laboratory measurements into calendar years contain irregularities that create temporal plateaus where different actual dates can produce identical radiocarbon measurements. These calibration problems are particularly acute for the time periods when megalithic construction was most active, creating chronological blind spots that obscure precisely when these monuments were built. The absence of organic materials at many megalithic sites eliminates even the possibility of radiocarbon dating, leaving these monuments completely unanchored in archaeological chronology. Pure stone constructions like those at Puma Punku in Bolivia or the precision-cut blocks at Baalbek in Lebanon exist without any organic associations that could provide temporal context. Their construction dates remain completely unknown, existing in archaeological limbo where they could theoretically have been built at any point in human history. Thermoluminescence dating of megalithic ceramics produces results that often contradict radiocarbon chronologies from the same sites, suggesting that different dating methods may be measuring different temporal events rather than construction periods. The ceramics might date to ritual activities that occurred long after construction, maintenance episodes that involved heating of ancient materials, or secondary occupations that had no relationship to original building activities. The stratigraphic contexts of megalithic sites often display evidence of multiple construction phases, demolition events, and reconstruction activities that blur the distinction between original building and later modification. Archaeological excavation reveals layers of activity that span millennia, making it impossible to determine which organic materials relate to primary construction and which reflect subsequent human activity at already ancient sites. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal buried features at megalithic sites that suggest construction activities extending far beyond the time ranges indicated by surface radiocarbon dates. These hidden structures may represent earlier phases of building that predate the organic materials used for current chronological frameworks, implying that megalithic construction began significantly earlier than existing dates suggest. The dating uncertainty extends to entire megalithic cultures rather than individual monuments. The temporal frameworks that define Neolithic periods, Bronze Age transitions, and cultural sequences rely heavily on radiocarbon chronologies that may systematically misdate the phenomena they purport to measure. If megalithic construction occurs significantly earlier or later than current dating suggests, then entire archaeological periods may require redefinition. Modern attempts to improve megalithic dating through new analytical techniques continue to produce results that complicate rather than clarify temporal understanding. Advanced laboratory methods reveal contamination sources, calibration problems, and measurement uncertainties that previous analyses had not detected, suggesting that chronological frameworks built on decades of radiocarbon dating may rest on fundamentally unreliable foundations. The monuments maintain their physical reality despite temporal uncertainty, their engineered precision and acoustic properties functioning regardless of when they were constructed. They serve as permanent reminders that human capability can manifest in forms that transcend the chronological frameworks used to organize archaeological understanding, creating achievements whose temporal context remains as mysterious as their construction methods and original purposes. The patterns emerge like echoes across vast oceans, architectural techniques appearing simultaneously on continents separated by waters that supposedly formed insurmountable barriers to prehistoric human contact. In the quiet hours before dawn, when mist rises from landscapes that have known countless such mornings, the similarities between distant megalithic sites speak of knowledge that transcended geographical boundaries through means that remain archaeologically invisible. The precision-fitted stonework of Sacsayhuaman in Peru mirrors techniques found at Baalbek in Lebanon, despite being separated by oceans, continents, and cultures that mainstream archaeology insists developed in complete isolation from each other. Both sites display blocks weighing hundreds of tons carved to tolerances measured in millimeters, their surfaces meeting along irregular three-dimensional curves that require identical understanding of spatial mathematics and stoneworking capabilities. The convergence suggests either direct contact between ancient builders or independent development of identical advanced technologies. At Easter Island, where Pacific waters stretch toward horizons unmarked by other landmasses, the Moai statues rest on foundations constructed with the same mortarless megalithic techniques found in the Andes, despite the island's supposed isolation from mainland cultures. The massive stone platforms, called ahu, display precision stonework that matches the quality found at sites thousands of miles distant on the South American continent. The builders of these remote monuments possess knowledge identical to that demonstrated by cultures they supposedly never encountered. The astronomical alignments that characterize megalithic sites display similar convergence across geographical distances that challenge conventional understanding of cultural diffusion. Stone circles in Scotland align with lunar phenomena using techniques nearly identical to those found at sites in the Americas, despite being separated by an entire ocean and supposedly developing during different historical periods. The builders encoded identical astronomical knowledge in monuments built with similar mathematical precision, suggesting shared understanding of celestial mechanics that transcends cultural boundaries. Only took several centuries of global exploration to reveal the extent of megalithic similarities across supposedly isolated cultures. Yet the implications of these convergences continue to challenge archaeological interpretation. The patterns suggest either advanced maritime capabilities that enabled prehistoric contact between distant continents or parallel development of identical sophisticated technologies, both possibilities that contradict established models of ancient human capabilities and cultural evolution. The acoustic properties of megalithic chambers display identical engineering principles at sites separated by vast geographical distances. Underground complexes in Malta demonstrate sound amplification techniques nearly identical to those found in chambers beneath pyramids in Egypt, despite being built by cultures that archaeology insists had no contact with each other. The builders understood identical principles of acoustic engineering, creating sound environments that function according to the same mathematical relationships regardless of their geographical location. In the Americas, The temple complexes of ancient Mexico display construction techniques that mirror those found in Egyptian pyramid building, including the use of massive blocks fitted with precision that rivals contemporary machine work. The mathematical relationships embedded in these structures encode identical geometric principles, suggesting shared understanding of architectural proportions and engineering capabilities that extends across oceans and continents. The similarity extends beyond construction techniques to encompass symbolic systems that appear at megalithic sites across the globe. Spiral motifs carved into stone surfaces at Newgrange in Ireland match patterns found at sites in the southwestern United States. Despite being separated by an entire continent and ocean, the convergence of symbolic systems suggests either direct cultural contact or independent development of identical artistic and mathematical concepts. The transportation of massive stones over impossible distances appears as a common characteristic of megalithic sites, regardless of their geographical location. Builders in Britain transported blue stones from Wales across terrain that should have been impassable to prehistoric technologies, while constructors in Peru moved blocks weighing hundreds of tons across mountain valleys that present similar logistical challenges. The solutions to these transport problems display identical engineering approaches despite being implemented by cultures that supposedly never communicated. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal buried structures at megalithic sites that display identical architectural features across vast geographical distances. Hidden chambers, underground passages, and foundation systems show remarkable consistency in design and construction techniques, suggesting that the similarities visible on surface monuments extend to hidden portions of these sites that remain unexcavated. The precision of megalithic astronomy appears with suspicious consistency at sites separated by oceans and continents. Monuments in Peru track the same celestial phenomena with identical mathematical accuracy as structures in Egypt, despite being built by cultures that mainstream archaeology claims developed astronomical knowledge independently. The convergence suggests either shared astronomical traditions or parallel development of identical observational capabilities and mathematical frameworks. The dating uncertainties that surround megalithic sites compound the mystery of their geographical distribution. If these monuments were built during different time periods by different cultures, their technological similarities become even more remarkable. If they were constructed contemporaneously by cultures in regular contact, then prehistoric maritime capabilities far exceeded conventional archaeological estimates of ancient seafaring abilities. The mystery deepens when identical megalithic techniques appear at sites that display no other cultural similarities. Populations that used different tool technologies, produced different ceramic styles, and practiced different subsistence strategies nonetheless, built monuments using identical advanced stoneworking methods. The technological convergence occurs without broader cultural similarity, suggesting that megalithic knowledge represented a specialized body of information that could be transmitted independently of other cultural practices. Modern attempts to explain megalithic similarities through cultural diffusion models require prehistoric maritime capabilities that exceed anything documented in the archaeological record of ancient seafaring. The transportation of people, knowledge, and possibly materials across oceanic distances would necessitate navigational abilities, vessel construction techniques, and organizational capabilities that challenge conventional understanding of prehistoric human achievements. The alternative explanation: independent development of identical sophisticated technologies presents equally challenging implications for understanding human cognitive capabilities and technological innovation. The convergence would suggest that human intelligence naturally tends towards specific solutions when confronted with similar engineering challenges, regardless of cultural context or geographical isolation. The patterns persist across continents like whispers of forgotten knowledge, architectural techniques that somehow transcended the barriers that supposedly separated ancient cultures. The megalithic builders left monuments that speak of connections extending beyond the geographical limitations that conventional archaeology attributes to their time periods, creating structures that continue to challenge understanding of how knowledge moved across the ancient world and how human capability expressed itself in similar forms despite vast distances and cultural differences. The stones maintain their testimony across oceans and continents, their identical precision and engineering sophistication serving as permanent evidence that human knowledge once manifested in forms that transcended the boundaries traditionally used to organize archaeological understanding of cultural development and technological diffusion. The mathematics sleep within the stones like memories encoded in crystalline structure, geometric relationships that reveal themselves only to observers equipped with the theoretical knowledge necessary to recognize their presence. At megalithic sites across the world, the proportions of ancient monuments embed mathematical constants and geometric ratios that would not be formally discovered by academic mathematics for centuries or millennia after their construction in permanent stone. The Great Pyramid at Giza encodes the ratio pi within its fundamental dimensions with precision that approaches modern mathematical constants. The monument's base perimeter, when divided by twice its original height, produces the value 3.14159 to several decimal places, the same mathematical relationship that describes the ratio between a circle's circumference and its diameter. The builders achieved this precision through careful planning and construction techniques that demonstrate understanding of geometric principles typically attributed to much later civilizations. Archaeological investigation reveals that this mathematical encoding was intentional rather than accidental, embedded in the pyramid's design through proportional relationships that govern multiple aspects of its construction. The monument's internal chambers display dimensional ratios that incorporate the same mathematical constants, suggesting systematic application of geometric knowledge throughout the structure's architectural planning. The builders possessed not only practical construction skills, but theoretical understanding of mathematical relationships that formal mathematics would not recognize for millennia. The golden ratio appears with suspicious frequency in megalithic architecture, despite being supposedly unknown to the cultures responsible for these monuments. At Stonehenge, the proportional relationships between different structural elements encode the value 1.618034, the mathematical constant that describes optimal aesthetic proportions, and appears throughout natural systems from spiral galaxies to flowering plants. The builders incorporated this ratio into their monument's design through dimensional relationships that create visual harmony according to mathematical principles they supposedly did not understand. Only took several millennia for formal mathematics to develop theoretical frameworks capable of explaining the geometric relationships that these ancient monuments demonstrate through architectural proportions. The builders encoded mathematical knowledge in permanent structures that continue to reveal their sophistication to observers equipped with appropriate analytical tools and theoretical understanding. The astronomical alignments of megalithic sites incorporate mathematical relationships that extend far beyond simple directional pointing towards celestial objects. At Newgrange in Ireland, the monument's dimensions create geometric relationships that encode the mathematical constants governing Earth's orbital mechanics, axial tilt, and rotational period. The builders understood not only observational astronomy, but the mathematical principles that describe planetary motion according to relationships that formal astronomy would not recognize until the development of modern celestial mechanics. In Peru's Machu Picchu, the proportional relationships between different architectural elements incorporate mathematical constants that describe the geometric properties of regular polygons, spherical trigonometry, and three-dimensional coordinate systems. The builders applied advanced mathematical knowledge to construction projects that required understanding of spatial relationships extending far beyond practical building requirements. The mathematical encoding suggests theoretical knowledge that exceeded immediate architectural needs. The harmonic ratios embedded in megalithic acoustic chambers reveal understanding of mathematical relationships that govern sound wave behavior, frequency interactions, and resonance phenomena. At the hypogeum in Malta, the chamber dimensions create acoustic effects based on mathematical ratios that correspond to musical intervals, harmonic relationships that formal acoustics would not recognize until the development of modern wave theory and frequency analysis. The precision of megalithic mathematics extends to dimensional relationships that incorporate multiple mathematical constants simultaneously within single architectural systems. The builders created monuments that encode pi, the golden ratio, harmonic proportions, and astronomical constants through overlapping geometric relationships that suggest systematic application of advanced mathematical knowledge rather than accidental approximation of optimal proportions. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal buried features at megalithic sites that display identical mathematical relationships in their hidden architectural elements, suggesting that ancient builders maintained consistent geometric standards throughout their monuments, even in portions that would never be visible to observers. The mathematical precision extends to foundation systems, underground chambers, and structural elements that remain unexcavated. The mathematical knowledge embedded in megalithic architecture appears without apparent precedent in the archaeological record of the cultures responsible for these monuments. The geometric sophistication manifests fully developed in stone constructions without evidence of the experimental phases, learning processes, or theoretical development that such mathematical mastery would seemingly require. The knowledge appears to emerge without archaeological context, suggesting either advanced educational systems that left no other trace or knowledge transmission methods that remain archaeologically invisible. The convergence of mathematical principles across megalithic sites separated by vast geographical distances compounds the mystery of ancient geometric knowledge. Monuments in Egypt, Peru, Britain, and Malta display identical mathematical relationships despite being built by cultures that supposedly developed geometric understanding independently. The mathematical convergence suggests either direct transmission of advanced theoretical knowledge between ancient civilizations or parallel development of identical mathematical frameworks. Modern computer analysis of megalithic proportions continues to reveal mathematical relationships that previous observers had not detected, suggesting that ancient geometric knowledge exceeded even current estimates of prehistoric mathematical sophistication. Advanced analytical techniques uncover layered mathematical systems that incorporate multiple geometric principles simultaneously, creating architectural frameworks that demonstrate theoretical understanding comparable to formal mathematical systems. The mathematical precision of megalithic construction challenges conventional understanding of how complex theoretical knowledge develops and manifests in practical applications. The builders applied geometric principles with accuracy that rivals modern engineering while supposedly lacking the theoretical frameworks, numerical systems, and educational institutions that contemporary mathematics considers essential for such sophisticated application of mathematical knowledge. The absence of mathematical texts, numerical notation, or educational artifacts at megalithic sites makes their geometric sophistication even more remarkable. The builders transmitted complex mathematical knowledge across generations without the benefit of written mathematics, formal educational systems, or the institutional frameworks that support mathematical research and application in contemporary societies. The mathematical relationships embedded in ancient stone continue to reveal their sophistication to modern analysis equipped with computer modeling, precision measurement, and advanced geometric theory. The monuments serve as permanent libraries of mathematical knowledge, encoded in architectural form, their geometric relationships continuing to challenge understanding of prehistoric human capabilities and the origins of mathematical thinking. The stones maintain their mathematical precision with consistency that spans millennia, their carefully calculated proportions continuing to demonstrate the same geometric relationships that their builders incorporated thousands of years ago. They serve as permanent testimony that mathematical knowledge can manifest in forms that transcend the theoretical limitations of their historical context, creating monuments whose geometric sophistication continues to reveal itself to observers equipped with appropriate analytical tools and mathematical understanding. Beneath the visible monuments, tunnels pierce solid bedrock with purpose that remains archaeologically opaque, their passages stretching through stone foundations that predate surface structures by centuries or millennia. Ground-penetrating radar reveals networks of underground chambers and corridors that connect distant points through routes that follow no logical pattern recognizable to contemporary engineering, creating subterranean systems whose function and construction methods challenge every assumption about ancient capabilities. The underground complex at Derinkuyu in Turkey extends 11 levels deep into volcanic rock, accommodating thousands of inhabitants in chambers carved from living stone with precision that rivals modern excavation techniques. The ventilation system maintains breathable air throughout the entire complex through shafts that penetrate hundreds of feet of solid rock, while water systems channel fresh springs through carved channels that follow mathematical gradients calculated to maintain consistent flow throughout the underground city. Archaeological investigation reveals construction techniques that defy conventional understanding of ancient excavation capabilities. The builders removed millions of cubic feet of solid rock using tools that left no trace in the archaeological record, creating spaces with ceiling heights, wall thicknesses, and structural supports that demonstrate advanced understanding of excavation engineering and rock mechanics. The work required organizational capabilities that could coordinate large-scale construction projects across decades or centuries while maintaining architectural consistency throughout the entire complex. The precision of underground stonework matches or exceeds that found in surface megalithic monuments, with chamber walls carved to tolerances measured in millimeters and ceiling configurations that distribute structural loads according to engineering principles that formal architecture would not recognize for millennia. The builders understood rock stress patterns, excavation stability, and structural design principles that enabled them to create vast underground spaces without the collapse or structural failure that typically accompanies large-scale excavation in volcanic rock. Only took several decades of archaeological investigation to reveal the true extent of underground megalithic construction. Yet the implications of these discoveries continue to challenge conventional understanding of prehistoric human capabilities. The subterranean networks suggest organizational abilities, technical knowledge, and construction capabilities that exceed anything attributed to the cultures responsible for their creation. The acoustic properties of underground megalithic chambers reveal sophisticated understanding of sound engineering principles applied to excavated spaces carved from solid rock. Many tunnels and chambers demonstrate acoustic effects that amplify voices, create resonance phenomena, and manipulate sound propagation in ways that require mathematical understanding of wave behavior in underground environments. The builders engineered acoustic systems that function according to the same principles found in surface megalithic sites, suggesting integrated knowledge systems that encompassed both excavation and sound engineering. At Newgrange in Ireland, passages carved through earth and stone led to chambers that predate surface construction by centuries, their walls lined with precision stonework that matches the quality found in visible portions of the monument. Ground-penetrating radar reveals additional underground features that remain unexcavated, suggesting that the known passage tomb represents only a fraction of the site's total underground construction. The mysterious tunnels of Europe stretch for hundreds of miles through bedrock that would challenge modern excavation equipment, connecting distant sites through underground routes that bypass surface terrain obstacles. These passages, known as Erdstall in German-speaking regions, demonstrate excavation techniques that removed solid rock with efficiency approaching that of contemporary tunnel boring machines, yet they were carved using technologies that left no archaeological evidence except the tunnels themselves. The dating of underground megalithic construction presents challenges that exceed even those faced by surface monuments. Excavated chambers contain no organic material suitable for radiocarbon analysis, while the rock removal techniques leave no tool marks that could indicate construction methods or time periods. The underground networks exist in temporal suspension. Their construction dates completely unknown despite their obvious relationship to surface megalithic sites. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal the true extent of underground megalithic construction, showing buried chambers and passages that extend far beyond anything visible on surface surveys. Many sites that appear to consist of simple stone circles or isolated monuments actually represent the surface expressions of vast underground complexes that remain completely unexcavated. The engineering challenges of underground megalithic construction exceed those posed by surface monuments in every measurable category. Excavating chambers in solid rock requires removal of material measured in millions of cubic feet, while maintaining structural stability throughout the excavation process demands understanding of rock mechanics that formal geology would not recognize for millennia. The builders accomplished underground construction that contemporary engineering approaches with considerable caution and advanced equipment. The ventilation systems of underground megalithic sites demonstrate understanding of airflow dynamics, pressure differentials, and atmospheric circulation that enable large numbers of people to inhabit spaces deep beneath the surface. The builders calculated shaft dimensions, chamber configurations, and airflow patterns that maintain breathable atmospheres throughout complex underground networks, suggesting engineering knowledge that encompasses both excavation techniques and environmental control systems. The water management systems found in underground megalithic complexes reveal hydraulic engineering capabilities that formal hydrology would not recognize until the development of modern fluid dynamics. Channels carved in bedrock maintain precise gradients that ensure consistent water flow over distances measured in miles, while drainage systems prevent flooding and moisture accumulation in underground chambers that would otherwise become uninhabitable. The mystery deepens when similar underground construction techniques appear at megalithic sites separated by vast geographical distances. Excavated chambers in Turkey display construction methods nearly identical to those found in underground complexes in Peru, despite being separated by continents and supposedly built by cultures that had no contact with each other. The convergence suggests either direct transmission of advanced excavation knowledge or independent development of identical underground construction technologies. Modern attempts to understand underground megalithic construction through experimental archaeology have achieved only limited success. Despite access to contemporary excavation equipment and theoretical knowledge of rock mechanics, the ancient builders accomplished underground construction that modern engineering approaches with considerable difficulty, creating excavated spaces whose stability and functionality continue to exceed contemporary understanding of excavation engineering principles. The underground passages maintain their structural integrity with consistency that spans millennia, their carefully calculated dimensions and support systems continuing to function as their builders intended thousands of years ago. The chambers resist collapse, flooding, and other structural failures that typically affect large excavated spaces, serving as permanent demonstrations that ancient excavation knowledge could create underground construction whose performance exceeds that achieved by contemporary tunneling and excavation technologies. The tunnels stretch through bedrock like stone arteries, carrying messages between distant points. Their underground networks creating connections that surface geography cannot explain, and construction methods that remain archaeologically invisible, linking megalithic sites through passages that challenge every assumption about prehistoric capabilities and organizational systems. The cutting patterns preserved in ancient stone surfaces tell stories without words. Their systematic grooves and incisions suggesting technologies that have vanished from the archaeological record as completely as if they never existed. At megalithic sites across the world, the marks left by ancient tools reveal working methods that exceed the capabilities of copper, bronze, and stone implements supposedly available to their creators. Yet no artifacts remain that could account for such precise and efficient stone cutting. At Puma Punku in Bolivia, where the Altiplano stretches toward horizons marked by distant peaks, andesite blocks display cutting marks that suggest saw-like tools capable of slicing through volcanic rock with the efficiency of contemporary diamond-tipped equipment. The grooves follow perfectly straight lines across surfaces measured in meters, maintaining consistent depth and width that would challenge modern stone-cutting machinery. Yet, archaeological investigation of the site has revealed no metal tools, no evidence of advanced metallurgy, no artifacts that could explain the precision visible on these ancient surfaces. The systematic nature of these cutting patterns reveals working methods that employed consistent techniques across entire construction projects. At Egyptian granite quarries, unfinished obelisks display regular percussion marks where workers removed material following predetermined lines with mathematical accuracy. The tool marks form patterns that suggest standardized implements used according to systematic procedures, yet the tools themselves have disappeared without leaving any trace in the archaeological record of ancient Egyptian technology. Archaeological analysis of tool marks on megalithic surfaces reveals cutting patterns that require implements harder than the stones being worked. Granite, which ranks high on the mineral hardness scale, displays clean cutting marks that would require tools of superior hardness to produce. Yet the same cultures responsible for this precision stone cutting supposedly possessed only copper and bronze implements, metals that rank lower in hardness than the granite they allegedly shaped. Only took several decades of material science to develop diamond-tipped tools capable of replicating the cutting patterns visible on ancient megalithic surfaces. Yet, the archaeological record contains no evidence of comparable tool technologies in prehistoric contexts. The ancient builders achieved cutting precision using implements that remain completely absent from the material culture that archaeology attributes to their time periods. The efficiency implied by ancient cutting patterns exceeds what experimental archaeology has achieved using reconstructed prehistoric tools. Modern attempts to replicate megalithic stone working using copper, bronze, and stone implements progress at rates that would require centuries to complete projects that ancient builders apparently finished within reasonable construction timeframes. The discrepancy suggests either tool technologies not reflected in the archaeological record or working methods that remain fundamentally misunderstood. At Lebanese quarries near Baalbek, limestone blocks display cutting marks that suggest tools capable of removing material at rates approaching those of contemporary quarrying equipment. The surfaces show evidence of systematic material removal following planned cutting sequences that maximized efficiency while maintaining precision. Yet, no artifacts have been discovered that could account for such advanced quarrying capabilities, creating technological gaps between achievement and available tools. The preservation of tool marks on ancient stone surfaces creates permanent records of working methods that exceed the capabilities seemingly available to their creators. Unlike organic tools that decay or metal implements that corrode, the stone surfaces maintain precise documentation of ancient cutting techniques that can be analyzed using contemporary materials, science, and tool mark analysis. The evidence speaks of capabilities that transcend the technological limitations supposedly governing prehistoric stoneworking. The cutting patterns reveal understanding of stone's internal structure and optimal removal techniques that formal geology and material science would not recognize until the development of modern quarrying theory. Ancient workers followed natural fracture planes, exploited crystalline weaknesses, and employed controlled splitting techniques that demonstrate sophisticated knowledge of rock mechanics and material properties. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal unexcavated stone working sites that may contain tool caches or workshops that could illuminate ancient cutting technologies. Many megalithic sites show evidence of extensive quarrying and stone preparation activities that remain buried beneath soil and sediment, suggesting that the tool technologies responsible for megalithic construction may await discovery in contexts that have not yet been archaeologically investigated. The acoustic analysis of tool marks reveals information about ancient working methods that visual inspection cannot detect. Different cutting tools produce characteristic vibration patterns that leave microscopic signatures in stone surfaces, creating acoustic fingerprints that can identify tool types and working techniques. Modern analysis of megalithic surfaces reveals acoustic evidence of cutting tools that do not match any implements found in prehistoric archaeological contexts. The mathematical precision of ancient cutting patterns suggests tools that could maintain consistent performance across extended working periods. Many megalithic surfaces display cutting marks that maintain uniform depth, width, and spacing across large areas, implying implements that resisted wear and maintained sharp cutting edges despite prolonged use on hard stone surfaces. Such tool performance would require metallurgy or material technologies that exceed anything documented in prehistoric archaeological contexts. The mystery extends to entire quarrying operations that show evidence of systematic stone extraction using technologies that left no archaeological trace. Ancient quarries display evidence of large-scale material removal accomplished through coordinated cutting operations that would require standardized tools, organized work crews, and technical knowledge capable of planning complex extraction sequences. Yet the same sites contain no evidence of the tool technologies or organizational artifacts that such operations would seemingly require. Modern materials. Science analysis of megalithic surfaces continues to reveal cutting evidence that challenges understanding of ancient stoneworking capabilities. Advanced microscopic examination uncovers tool mark characteristics that suggest cutting technologies more advanced than anything previously attributed to prehistoric cultures, implying that ancient stoneworking capabilities exceeded current archaeological estimates by significant margins. The tool marks speak in the language of systematic precision, their patterns revealing working methods that achieved efficiency and accuracy comparable to contemporary stone cutting, while leaving no trace of the technologies that made such performance possible. The cutting evidence preserves permanent documentation of ancient capabilities that manifested in stoneworking achievements before vanishing completely from the material record, creating monuments whose construction methods remain as mysterious as their original purposes. The stone surfaces maintain their testimony across millennia, their preserved cutting patterns continuing to document working methods that exceed the capabilities seemingly available to their creators. They serve as permanent libraries of technical knowledge encoded in tool marks that challenge understanding of prehistoric human capabilities and the technologies that could achieve such systematic precision in stone cutting operations that left no other archaeological evidence. The silence of the builders echoes across millennia like an absence that speaks louder than words. Their monuments standing as permanent testimony to human achievement while their creators vanished into historical muteness, that no archaeological excavation has been able to penetrate. The most enduring structures ever built by human hands carry no signatures, no inscriptions, no documentary evidence that might illuminate the identities, motivations, or methods of the people who conceived and constructed them. At Gobekli Tepe in Turkey, where carved pillars rise from earth that concealed them for 11,000 years, the builders left behind sophisticated stone carvings that display artistic mastery and symbolic complexity. Yet not a single character of written text appears anywhere on the monument's surfaces. The animals that spiral around massive stone columns were carved with anatomical precision that suggests intimate knowledge of local wildlife, seasonal behaviors, and ecological relationships. Yet the meaning of their arrangement and the purpose of their creation remain archaeologically impenetrable. The absence of written records at megalithic sites extends beyond simple lack of literacy to encompass complete absence of symbolic systems that might preserve information about construction methods, architectural purposes, or cultural contexts. Even cultures that developed sophisticated artistic traditions, complex tool technologies, and advanced mathematical knowledge left no explanatory texts that might illuminate their greatest achievements. The monuments stand as finished sentences in an unknown language, their meaning clear in general terms but opaque in specific detail. Archaeological investigation reveals evidence of careful planning and long-term organization at megalithic sites, yet no artifacts preserve the administrative records, construction schedules, or logistical documents that such complex projects would seemingly require. The builders coordinated massive construction operations involving hundreds or thousands of workers across decades or centuries, while leaving no trace of the organizational systems that made such coordination possible. Only took several millennia of written human history to develop documentary traditions capable of preserving detailed records of monumental construction projects. Yet, the megalithic builders accomplished their greatest achievements without creating any permanent records of their methods, motivations, or identities. The silence feels intentional, as though they understood that stone would outlast parchment and that their monuments would speak more eloquently than any written explanation. The mystery deepens when similar patterns of documentary absence appear at megalithic sites across vast geographical distances. Builders in Egypt, Peru, Britain, and Malta all created sophisticated monuments while leaving no written records that might explain their construction methods or cultural purposes. The convergence of silence suggests either shared cultural practices that discouraged written documentation or parallel development of traditions that valued permanent construction over temporary record keeping. The technological capabilities demonstrated at megalithic sites imply educational systems sophisticated enough to transmit complex knowledge across generations, yet no artifacts preserve the teaching materials, technical manuals, or knowledge preservation systems that such education would seemingly require. The builders possessed mathematical understanding, astronomical knowledge, acoustic engineering skills, and construction capabilities that had to be learned and transmitted. Yet the methods of knowledge transmission remain archaeologically invisible. At Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where massive blocks fit together with precision measured in millimeters, the construction displays evidence of systematic planning that would require detailed technical drawings, dimensional calculations, and construction sequences preserved in some permanent form. Yet archaeological investigation has revealed no plans, no technical documents, no written records that might illuminate how such precision construction was achieved across multi-year building projects. The absence of contemporary documentation makes megalithic achievement even more remarkable by eliminating the possibility that these monuments represent copies or adaptations of earlier prototypes preserved in written technical traditions. The builders appear to have developed sophisticated construction capabilities without the benefit of accumulated written knowledge, technical literature, or documented experimental traditions that might preserve lessons learned from earlier projects. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal buried features at megalithic sites that suggest even more extensive construction activities than surface monuments indicate. Yet these hidden structures show no evidence of the documentary materials that such complex projects would seemingly require. The builders maintained consistent architectural standards and technical capabilities across entire buried complexes, while leaving no written records that might explain their methods or purposes. The dating uncertainties that surround megalithic construction compound the mystery of their documentary absence. If these monuments were built over extended periods by multiple generations of builders, then knowledge transmission systems must have preserved technical information with remarkable fidelity across centuries or millennia. Yet no artifacts document the educational traditions, apprenticeship systems, or knowledge preservation methods that such continuity would require. The silence extends to mythological and oral traditions that might preserve cultural memory of megalithic construction. Even cultures that maintained rich storytelling traditions, complex mythological systems, and detailed oral histories preserve no legends that might explain the origins, purposes, or construction methods of their most impressive monuments. The megalithic builders seem to have vanished not only from written history, but from cultural memory itself. Modern attempts to understand megalithic construction through experimental archaeology and reverse engineering have achieved only partial success. Despite access to contemporary engineering knowledge, precision instruments, and detailed documentation of reconstruction attempts. The original builders accomplished their achievements without the theoretical frameworks, technical literature, or experimental traditions that modern reconstruction efforts consider essential for comparable work. The documentary silence challenges conventional understanding of how complex technical knowledge develops and persists across time. Contemporary construction projects require extensive documentation to coordinate activities, preserve technical decisions, and enable quality control across extended building periods. Yet megalithic builders achieved comparable coordination and consistency while leaving no documentary evidence of their methods. The mystery suggests either knowledge transmission systems that operated without written documentation or construction methods, so fundamentally different from contemporary approaches that they required no permanent records. The builders may have possessed oral traditions sophisticated enough to preserve complex technical knowledge across generations, or they may have employed construction techniques so intuitive that they required minimal documentation to implement successfully. The monuments maintain their silent testimony across millennia, their sophisticated engineering and mathematical precision continuing to function without the documentary support that contemporary projects consider essential. They serve as permanent demonstrations that human knowledge can manifest in forms that transcend the record-keeping systems that modern civilization considers necessary for complex achievement, creating lasting works whose construction methods remain as mysterious as their original purposes. The silence speaks of builders who understood that stone would outlast words, that monuments would preserve their achievements more permanently than any written record, and that their greatest works would communicate across time without need for explanation or documentation. The megalithic builders achieved immortality through construction rather than literature, leaving behind achievements that continue to challenge understanding while their identities remain lost in historical silence. Climate patterns shift like slow breathing across geological time, their rhythms revealing that some megalithic monuments predate the stable conditions that mainstream archaeology considers essential for the development of complex human societies. Ice core data and paleoclimatic analysis document environmental changes that challenge conventional timelines of cultural evolution, suggesting that sophisticated construction capabilities emerged during periods of climatic instability that supposedly prevented the social complexity necessary for monumental architecture. The construction of Gobekli Tepe in Turkey coincided with the final phases of the last glacial period, when ice sheets still claimed vast territories to the north and sea levels remained hundreds of feet below their current boundaries. The monument's builders worked during a time of dramatic climatic transition, when changing precipitation patterns, shifting vegetation zones, and unstable weather systems supposedly made settled life impossible. Yet, they accomplished construction projects that required coordinated effort across decades or centuries, suggesting organizational capabilities that transcended the environmental limitations traditionally thought necessary for complex society. Archaeological investigation reveals that many megalithic sites display evidence of construction activities that began during periods of climatic stress and environmental uncertainty. The builders initiated massive stoneworking projects during ice ages, interglacial transitions, and episodes of rapid environmental change that mainstream theory suggests would have prevented the social stability necessary for monumental construction. The timing challenges fundamental assumptions about the relationship between environmental conditions and cultural development. Sea level changes documented through marine geology reveal that some coastal megalithic sites were constructed when ocean levels differed dramatically from their current positions. Underwater archaeological surveys have discovered stone structures on continental shelves that were dry land during glacial periods but have been submerged for millennia. These sites suggest that megalithic construction began when geographical conditions differed substantially from those that characterized later historical periods. Only took several decades of paleoclimatic research to reveal the extent of environmental change that occurred during megalithic construction periods. Yet the implications of these discoveries continue to challenge archaeological interpretation. The climate data suggests that sophisticated construction capabilities emerged during environmental conditions that formal theory considers incompatible with complex social organization and monumental architecture. The glacial cycles that dominated megalithic construction periods created environmental conditions that supposedly prevented the agricultural development necessary for settled communities. Yet, megalithic sites display evidence of sophisticated planning and long-term organizational capabilities that suggest social complexity exceeding that of many agricultural societies. The builders achieved remarkable coordination during climatic periods that formal theory considers too unstable for complex cultural development. At Newgrange in Ireland, radiocarbon dating associates the monument's construction with climatic periods when local environmental conditions differed dramatically from those that characterize the region today. The builders worked during times when vegetation patterns, seasonal cycles, and weather systems maintained rhythms unlike anything experienced during historical periods. Yet, they accomplished precision construction and astronomical alignment that required detailed knowledge of local environmental conditions and celestial mechanics. Ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal buried features at megalithic sites that may predate currently accepted construction chronologies, suggesting that some monuments began during even earlier climatic periods than surface evidence indicates. These hidden structures await excavation that might reveal construction activities extending back into Ice Age conditions that formal theory considers incompatible with monumental architecture and complex social organization. The timing of megalithic construction relative to agricultural development presents paradoxes that challenge conventional models of cultural evolution. Many monuments predate the development of farming in their regions by centuries or millennia, yet they display organizational capabilities that formal theory associates with agricultural societies. The builders achieved complex coordination and sophisticated construction without the economic foundations that mainstream archaeology considers necessary for monumental architecture. The environmental reconstruction of megalithic construction periods reveals landscapes that differed dramatically from those that characterize the same regions today. Changes in temperature, precipitation, vegetation, and seasonal patterns created ecological conditions unlike anything experienced during historical periods. Yet the builders demonstrated intimate knowledge of local environmental systems and astronomical phenomena that suggests long-term observation and systematic knowledge accumulation despite climatic instability. Ice core analysis from Greenland and Antarctica provides precise documentation of climatic conditions during megalithic construction periods, revealing patterns of environmental change that challenge assumptions about the stable conditions necessary for cultural development. The data shows rapid climatic transitions, extreme weather events, and unstable environmental systems during periods when megalithic builders were accomplishing their most sophisticated achievements. The mystery deepens when megalithic construction appears to accelerate during periods of maximum climatic stress and environmental uncertainty. Some of the most sophisticated monuments were built during episodes of rapid environmental change that mainstream theory suggests would have disrupted social organization and prevented complex cultural activities. The builders seem to have thrived during conditions that formal models consider incompatible with monumental construction and social complexity. Marine sediment cores and lake bed analysis document sea level changes and environmental transitions that affected megalithic construction sites, revealing that many monuments were built when local geographical conditions differed substantially from their current state. Some sites that appear to occupy optimal positions for their intended functions may have been selected according to environmental criteria that no longer exist due to climatic changes that occurred after construction. The paleobotanical evidence from megalithic sites reveals vegetation patterns that existed during construction periods but disappeared due to subsequent climatic changes. The builders selected construction locations and planned astronomical alignments according to environmental conditions that may have persisted for only brief periods in geological time, suggesting sophisticated understanding of both environmental systems and climatic change patterns. Modern climate modeling attempts to reconstruct environmental conditions during megalithic construction periods continue to reveal discrepancies between the climatic stability that formal theory considers necessary for complex cultural development and the actual environmental conditions that existed when these monuments were built. The modeling suggests that megalithic builders achieved their greatest successes during periods that contemporary theory would predict to be culturally stagnant or regressive. The climatic timeline challenges conventional understanding of how environmental conditions relate to cultural capabilities and social development. The megalithic builders demonstrated that human achievement can transcend environmental limitations, creating sophisticated monuments during climatic periods that formal theory considers incompatible with complex construction projects and organizational capabilities. The climate data whispers of builders who worked during ice ages and interglacial transitions, constructing monuments that would outlast the environmental conditions that witnessed their creation. The paleoclimatic evidence suggests that human capability can manifest during periods of environmental stress and climatic uncertainty, creating achievements that challenge understanding of the relationship between environmental stability and cultural development. The Earth holds secrets in its electronic shadows, revealing through ground-penetrating radar the vast stone foundations that sleep beneath layers of soil and sediment accumulated across millennia. At megalithic sites around the world, modern remote sensing technology penetrates below the surface of known monuments to discover buried structures that dwarf anything visible above ground, suggesting that the impressive stones standing in contemporary landscapes represent only the exposed portions of construction projects whose true scale remains unmeasured and largely unexplored. Beneath the stone circles of Britain, radar surveys reveal buried foundations that extend in geometric patterns far beyond the boundaries of visible monuments. At Stonehenge, subsurface investigation has discovered evidence of timber structures, stone settings, and earthwork systems that encompass an area 20 times larger than the famous trilithons that dominate the site's surface appearance. The hidden features suggest that the monument functioned as part of a vast ceremonial landscape whose full extent has only recently become apparent through technological investigation. Archaeological radar imaging reveals construction techniques that challenge every assumption about megalithic building capabilities. Buried stone foundations display precision engineering that matches or exceeds the quality visible in surface monuments, with underground chambers, passages, and structural systems that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of load-bearing architecture, drainage engineering, and long-term structural stability. The builders maintain consistent construction standards throughout buried portions of their work that would never be visible to surface observers. At Gobekli Tepe in Turkey, ground-penetrating surveys reveal that the excavated circular enclosures represent only a small fraction of the site's total construction. Buried beneath the surface lie dozens of additional stone circles, each containing carved pillars that may exceed in sophistication anything currently visible at the site. The hidden monuments await excavation that could reveal megalithic achievements that surpass even the remarkable structures that have already been uncovered. Only took several decades of remote sensing technology to reveal the true extent of megalithic construction buried beneath seemingly modest surface monuments. Yet the implications of these discoveries continue to challenge archaeological understanding of prehistoric human capabilities. The buried structures suggest organizational abilities and construction capacities that exceed current estimates of ancient achievement by orders of magnitude. The radar signatures reveal construction patterns that extend across entire landscapes rather than being confined to individual monument sites. Buried stone alignments, earthwork systems, and foundation structures create geometric patterns that encompass areas measured in square miles, suggesting that megalithic builders conceived and implemented construction projects at geographical scales that approach regional planning. The scope implies organizational capabilities and mathematical knowledge that exceed anything typically attributed to prehistoric cultures. In Egypt's Giza complex, subsurface radar investigation reveals buried chambers, passages, and foundation systems that extend far beneath the visible pyramids. The hidden structures suggest that the monuments familiar to surface observers represent only the upper portions of construction projects that penetrated deep into bedrock through excavation and foundation work whose full extent remains unknown. Recent discoveries hint at underground complexes that may rival the surface pyramids in their engineering sophistication. The depth of buried megalithic construction presents logistical challenges that exceed those posed by surface monuments in every measurable category. Excavating foundations deep into bedrock requires removal of material measured in millions of cubic yards. While maintaining structural stability throughout the construction process demands understanding of soil mechanics, groundwater systems, and excavation engineering that formal geology would not recognize for millennia. Ground-penetrating surveys continue to reveal evidence of megalithic construction at sites where no surface monuments exist, suggesting that many ancient building projects were completed entirely underground or were subsequently buried so completely that their existence remained unknown until modern remote sensing made their detection possible. These hidden sites may preserve megalithic achievements that exceed anything visible in contemporary landscapes. The radar evidence reveals construction sequences that challenge conventional understanding of megalithic building chronologies. Many sites display evidence of multiple construction phases that extended across centuries or millennia, with buried foundations that predate surface monuments by significant time periods. The construction sequences suggest building traditions that maintained consistent architectural standards and technical capabilities across extended historical periods. The acoustic properties of buried megalithic chambers, detected through seismic analysis and ground-penetrating techniques, reveal that underground construction incorporated the same sophisticated sound engineering found in surface monuments. Hidden chambers demonstrate acoustic effects that require precise dimensional calculations and surface treatments, suggesting that megalithic builders applied identical engineering knowledge to buried construction that would never be experienced by surface observers. The water management systems revealed through subsurface investigation demonstrate hydraulic engineering capabilities that enable buried megalithic construction to remain stable and functional despite being located below groundwater levels. Ancient drainage systems, waterproofing techniques, and moisture control methods prevent flooding and structural deterioration in underground chambers that have remained dry for millennia despite their location in geologically active areas. The mystery deepens when buried megalithic features display identical construction techniques at sites separated by vast geographical distances. Underground chambers in Turkey show engineering methods nearly identical to those found in buried structures in Peru, despite being separated by continents and supposedly built by cultures that had no contact with each other. The convergence suggests either direct transmission of advanced construction knowledge or independent development of identical underground building technologies. Modern excavation attempts to expose buried megalithic features have revealed only tiny fractions of the construction indicated by remote sensing, suggesting that the full extent of ancient achievement may never be practically accessible through conventional archaeological methods. The buried structures await technological developments that might enable their investigation without the massive excavation projects that their full exposure would require. The radar signatures maintain their electronic testimony beneath accumulated sediment and soil, their geometric patterns continuing to document construction projects whose scale exceeds anything attempted by contemporary engineering, despite being accomplished using technologies that remain archaeologically invisible. The buried foundations rest like sleeping giants beneath landscapes that have forgotten their existence, waiting for investigation that might reveal megalithic capabilities that challenge every assumption about prehistoric human achievement. The hidden structures stretch beneath the surface like stone root systems, their buried foundations extending through bedrock and soil in patterns that suggest construction projects whose scope encompasses entire regions rather than individual monument sites. The ground-penetrating evidence whispers of builders who worked above and below ground simultaneously, creating architectural systems whose full extent remains hidden beneath the accumulated sediment of millennia, suggesting that the visible monuments represent only the exposed portions of achievements whose true scale awaits discovery through technologies that can penetrate the electronic shadows cast by ancient stone. The stones settle deeper into their ancient positions as night draws its quiet curtain across landscapes that have witnessed countless such transitions from light to darkness. In the gathering stillness, the mysteries they guard become less urgent, their questions dissolving into the peaceful rhythm of geological time where answers matter less than the simple fact of endurance. The megalithic monuments rest in their eternal patience, their precision joints and mathematical proportions maintaining their testimony through one more cycle of day and night. The builders who shaped these stones with impossible accuracy have long since returned to earth, their identities scattered like dust on winds that carry no memory of their names or faces. Yet their work remains, speaking quietly of human capability that transcended the limitations of its time. Underground, the buried foundations sleep beneath layers of soil that accumulated grain by grain across millennia. The hidden chambers and passages wait in darkness, their acoustic properties and structural engineering preserved in silence that spans centuries. Ground-penetrating radar may glimpse their geometric patterns, but the stones themselves rest undisturbed, patient in their concealment. The tool marks on ancient surfaces fade gradually under the slow caress of weather, their cutting patterns growing softer with each passing season. The precision that once marked the difference between human intention and natural process blurs into the gentler rhythms of erosion and time. The stones accept this gradual return to nature, their engineered surfaces slowly rejoining the geological processes from which they were temporarily borrowed. In quarries scattered across the world, unfinished megaliths lie where ancient workers left them, their partially severed forms becoming part of the bedrock again. The systematic percussion marks that document vanished technologies fill with moss and lichen, while the stones themselves settle deeper into earth that no longer remembers the sound of hammers striking granite in patterns that suggested impossible tools. The astronomical alignments continue their celestial appointments, marking solstices and equinoxes for observers who may no longer remember their original significance. The stones frame sunrises and track lunar cycles with the same precision their builders calculated millennia ago. But the mathematics embedded in their positions need no human witness to maintain their eternal accuracy. The silence of the builders deepens into the larger silence of geological time, where individual human achievements merge into the broader story of stone and earth. The monuments they created become part of the landscape's natural rhythm, their engineered precision gradually becoming indistinguishable from the patient work of wind and weather. As darkness completes its gentle arrival, the stones rest in peace that spans millennia, their mysteries intact and their questions unanswered. In the end, perhaps the answers matter less than the quiet testimony of human hands that once shaped stone with love and precision, creating monuments that would outlast memory itself. The night settles over ancient megaliths like a familiar blanket, and the stones sleep on,